surrounded, and everybody here has got a story.
My name's Clarissa Ward. I'm CNN's chief international correspondent. And I think for me, press freedom means that journalists around the world should be able to do their work, telling stories, bearing witness, holding people in power accountable without having to be concerned that those actions, that their work could land them in prison or even get them killed.
Thank you so much. It's really important to hear that from you because you are covering wars. You're a war correspondent and you take great risks going into the field. I wonder, could you talk us through the process of where you decide to report from and how you make that call about whether it's safe to do so? And I'm thinking of the time last year when you had to evacuate on air from Tel Aviv, when you were on set because there was an alert about an incoming missile, or even when you narrowly avoided an apparent Russian attack in Ukraine in 2022.
So I've been covering wars for more than 20 years, and I'm very blessed to work with a team of incredibly smart and hardworking and experienced people. There's always a huge amount of preparation and planning that goes into any trip. And anyone who's done this for a while knows that security underpins all of it. There's a great line from a Reuters editor from many decades ago who used to chastise some of his more adventurous correspondents by reminding them, cannot file if dead. And I think of those words often, and I understand that the most important thing or the most important goal of any mission or story is to ensure that the entire team comes back safely. And of course, that the people who we work with on the ground are safe too. So it's not a one size fits all type of approach. Each place will require a different set of considerations, but the most important part is that you prioritize it, that you devote the necessary planning to it, that you run through the different manifold potential scenarios that you could run into, and most crucially, that you listen to your colleagues who live in the places that most often you will be visiting. They should serve as your primary set of eyes and ears on the ground. They know the terrain better than you do. So essential to listen to the people you're working with on the ground.
Thank you, Clarissa. Could you just maybe think back to which conflicts have been the most difficult to cover from a press freedom point of view?
Well, the most difficult conflict to cover, I think, has been Gaza. International journalists have not been allowed into Gaza to cover the story. I managed to go in once with the UAE, and I'm the only one to have gone in without IDF access. More importantly, frankly, is the extraordinary toll that Palestinian journalists have paid for their efforts to continue to tell their story. More than 200 journalists and media workers killed in 2.5 years. And frankly speaking, no real sense of any accountability for this. And we see it again now in Lebanon. Israel has killed at least 15 journalists, I believe. And again, no sense of when there will be justice, when there will at least be some kind of formal inquiry as to why these journalists were killed, whether they were targeted, and how justice can best be served.
Well, the UN has continued to call for accountability across different agencies. So it's certainly something that's a real and major preoccupation from the Secretary General downwards. So let's hope that all of these cases are investigated thoroughly and transparently and quickly. Now, you've told so many stories, as I mentioned, Clarissa. You've also reported from places like the dance floor in Ukraine. And I wonder if you do that maybe to protect yourself, because the toll must be very heavy. I know you'll probably want to talk about the toll on the people living through these crises, but as a reporter, how do you process all of this stuff? Do you have to look for the lighter moments too?
I think you have a choice when you do this job for long enough. You either allow your heart to become calloused by years and years of seeing the worst of humanity, or you also choose to open your heart and to focus also on the best of humanity, which is always on display in conflict zones as well. And I really go out of my way to find stories that humanize, that resonate beyond borders, that speak to something I believe very profoundly in, which is a shared sense of humanity that exists in all of us. And so I really do use that as something of a compass when I'm thinking about stories. And these are the kinds of stories that might not make it to the front page of the news, but which I passionately believe give people around the world a better sense and a fuller picture of the depth and the complexity, and often even, yes, the beauty of spending time in conflict zones internationally, globally.
So does that make it, quote unquote, easier in a way to approach any subject, because you're always looking for the human story, and the validity of that story is the people you're talking to, because you're hoping, you're talking to not just one person, but many people will tell you a similar story, and that's what validates what you're saying.
I think it's more, I really try. It never gets easier to tell stories or to bear witness to horrors, people who have experienced profound trauma, violence, the loss of loved ones, assault, violation, repression. That is something that weighs hugely on any sentient being. And I really try to open my heart and devote my full focus when I am interviewing someone or listening to them or hearing their story. I really try to bear witness in a deeply somatic way. And that carries a toll. And for me, the way to offset that toll is to also be open to extraordinary acts of courage and kindness and altruism and beauty that I might see traveling in these places. Others, and I would say honestly, it's probably more common, compartmentalize. They try to kind of detach. They become cynical. And often we see a lot of undiagnosed PTSD in this industry because people choose to self-medicate, to numb out. And that really, I tell this to young journalists all the time, that is not sustainable in the long run. And I've been doing this for more than 20 years, so it needs to be sustainable for me.
Thanks for that message to young journalists, because that was one of my questions, but maybe we could build on that quickly, because I know time is short for you and we do appreciate it. In addition, young journalists are going to have to cope with something that perhaps we didn't have to so many years ago, is mis and disinformation. So, do you feel that it diverts your attention from the real story sometimes? How do you cope with that? Or do you just, as you say, do you follow the human story?
I think there is no question that it poses a huge challenge. It can be exhausting. It can be overwhelming. It can be very confusing. And it's one of those things where you can sit there and cry about it and moan about it, or you can accept the reality that this is part of the landscape that we now have to navigate. And you can focus on finding ways to mitigate the pressure, the risk, and being transparent, being human, being humble. We all make mistakes. This is part of reality. No one's expecting us to be superhuman, or maybe they are, but we're not. And what we can bring to the table, in addition to a kind of oath of trying to maintain the highest standards, is also the ability to acknowledge when we get things wrong. And I think that young journalists have a tremendous amount of challenges facing them, not least because there are so many attempts publicly to disparage us, not only from the baying mob online, but also from some of the most powerful people on the planet. And it feels to me that we have entered a very dangerous new era where journalists have become fair game, where the killing of journalists no longer elicits the bat of an eye. And I very much hope that we can come together and coalesce and continue to apply pressure to ensure that we create a better and safer space for journalists around the world to operate in.
Clarissa Ward from CNN, I'd like to thank you ever so much for your time. One final question, maybe, and again, always searching for the lighter side to some of the horrors that you say you encounter on a very regular basis. You know, when you're going with your bag by the door and you're running to the next war zone, what's the one thing that you absolutely have to have? I mean, is it a lighter body vest? Is it a less cumbersome helmet, or is it, I don't know, a favorite book or a photo?
I've got to have my Nicorette gum. That's my vice. I don't even smoke. I haven't smoked in years, but if I don't have my Nicorette gum,
someone's going to get a nasty question.
I pity my colleagues. Yeah.